Hello and welcome to the Blues Kind Show, a show for kind blues. Today what I wanted to talk about is something not expressly Carlton related, but relates, I think, to the broader community, and that is the suspension of Isaac Rankine. Before we get into it, I want to explain why I'm looking at it. Obviously, this is a show for Carlton and Carlton related issues. But part of where I want to go with this channel is I don't want to be a game recap person. I want to talk about broader issues and provide a more in-depth analysis. I therefore think where there is an issue that is more substantial, would like to talk about issues that affect supporters of football, not just the actual clubs, the actual games. And I suppose this is my little effort to reach out to my tiny community, and anyone else who'd be interested in having a look at it, about how I think this issue's been handled. Part of my mission statement is being a place, like I say every episode, for kind blues. But it doesn't have to just be Carlton fans. It can be kind footy fans in general. I want people to be able to come and discuss the football without the fear of hate and vitriol, which is something not promised across all platforms. Therefore, I think Isaac Rankine's actions and the subsequent suspension bear discussion. The facts that I think are important to discuss are that Rankine has been suspended for 4 weeks for using a homophobic slur to a Collingwood player during their match last Saturday. The word allegedly used was a 6-letter word starting with F, one of the most offensive terms used against people who identify as queer, homosexual, or any other really non-heterosexual identification. The last fact that I think is important is that Rankine did not self-report, but he did apologise seemingly after the investigation had already commenced. I also wanted to have a quick look at precedent. For people following this story, you would be very familiar with it, but I think it bears saying. The 2 past cases of most note were earlier this season. West Coast Eagles player Jack Graham was suspended for 4 weeks for using, I believe, the same slur. The main difference was that he self-reported to the AFL Integrity Unit before they commenced an investigation. Will Powell of the Gold Coast Suns was suspended in 2024 for 5 weeks. Again, I believe he used the same slur. So Isaac gets 1 week fewer than Will Powell and the same amount of weeks as Jack Graham, despite Jack Graham self-reporting, whereas there is no indication that Isaac Rankine self-reported. I think that the self-reporting is relevant because it goes to contrition. And contrition is a good indicator in terms of rehabilitation. So if you're trying to assess whether this was an isolated incident or not, a person showing contrition is probably more likely for it to be an isolated action, not a pattern of behaviour. There are other facts of this case that could be relevant, but I would prefer to keep it much more simple because my main gripe comes with how the AFL has handled this. I only want to address the actual suspension and the AFL's reasoning for it. I do not know Isaac Rankine or his conduct either specifically in this moment. I didn't have microphones on the ground, and I don't know what he's like in general. I could draw some inferences from afar, but I don't think it's necessarily all that helpful or useful. Ultimately, while I think that it's a bit gross of him and the Crows for trying to minimise the suspension, it is obviously in their best interests to do so. So while I may not like it, I think they should have copped their right whack. I understand why they did it. They also don't give out the suspension. The AFL gives the suspension out. So I will look at the AFL's responsibility in relation to the suspension. The AFL, including Andrew Dillon in his press conference yesterday, stated the main reason Rankine received 4 weeks instead of more was due to compelling medical circumstances. I find this reasoning untenable. Firstly, I just want to put it on the record, I do not doubt that Rankine would be having an adverse mental health response to the suspension. If he says he's having it, I am happy to take him at his word. I fully believe this is the case. My issue is this should not change the sentencing outcome. The AFL has gone against its own promise, having previously stated that subsequent offences by players performing homophobic slurs would result in greater suspensions over time. This has clearly not occurred. I understand why Jack Graham received a lighter sentence than Will Powell, despite Graham's action occurring more recently, again, because of the contrition. Isaac does not fit the same rubric. Therefore, they have gone against their word. The reason provided by the AFL, the compelling medical circumstances, I think also illegitimise the sentence. Reduction in sentence for, it can be mental health, but really any physical health ailments in terms of ordinary theory of sentencing is generally only considered relevant on 2 fronts. The first is that the mental health issue contributed to the action. So, for example, if someone had a manic event and this led them to perform some sort of negligent action, that would be taken into account in sentencing because they were not in their right mind. Or if someone was driving their car and had a seizure and they crashed, that would also be taken into account because provided that they're doing what they need to take care of their epilepsy, it is reasonable to say that they have tried to mitigate their risk. I think using this logic that the mental health may have contributed is a nonsense. Mental health does not make you a bigot. It may have made Isaac more vulnerable to any taunting or other negative attention he may have been receiving, but he could have used any other word to get his anger and frustration out. It did not need to be a slur. The other reason why mental health or general physical health could be taken into account in terms of reducing a sentence is if the person is unable to receive treatment due to the sentence. So an example of this might be, say a person was sentenced to jail, they might receive a lighter sentence or a sentence with certain caveats built into it if they needed regular medical attention that they couldn't get if they had just no additional conditions applied in order to facilitate them. I find this to be irrelevant. If Isaac's mental health would actually be this impacted by the suspension, then I think his mental health is actually what the priority should be, not the reduction of sentence. He's still able to get medical treatment while he is not playing. Therefore, the second possibility for using mental health as a reason to reduce a sentence is also not viable in this context. The AFL is not prioritising protection of all members of community. It has prioritised protecting an individual player. I want to be very clear. It is absolutely fine for the AFL to care for their players, and giving them the support they need is genuinely commendable. Like I mentioned, Isaac could have received a heavier suspension in line with the previous promise of the AFL and still provided him with the support he would need to get through what I'm sure would be a difficult period for him. However, the AFL is a public interest group. It receives enormous funding from the government as well as the broader community. Therefore, it is also in part responsible for ensuring health and safety in community. I can tell you from experience, there are so many people out there that love the game of Aussie rules football, but do not participate. They don't follow a professional team, or they don't want to play at a local level, or have any affiliation because of the bigotry they either endure directly or need to bear witness to. It makes for an incredibly hostile and unwelcome environment. It is comments like Rankine's that make people feel unwelcome and even unsafe of things escalating from what some people would regard as mere words to violence. The whole point of community safety is that it should not be up to a victim or a potential victim to risk assess who is merely throwing around horrible words, because they think it's funny or to blow off steam or whatever it happens to be, all the way up to people who are genuinely hateful and who may take action beyond just using words. Giving these sorts of concessions that the AFL has done in the suspension of Isaac Rankine gives cover for bigots everywhere. The AFL has handled this poorly, and their reasoning is inconsistent. While they may have protected the mental health of one player, there will be thousands of people in community who are hurting, who see this as a constant reminder that various groups in community don't really belong in the AFL world. The AFL likes to have people come and give money, and they say they care. I would argue for the sake of being able to legitimately attract sponsorship and, other sorts of recognition. But it is efforts like this that show they care to a point until it becomes inconvenient to keep caring. When it came time for the needs of the community to be taken over the needs of an individual player, the AFL buckled. One final thing. The AFL still, to this day, has never had an openly, I don't want to say openly gay because that's limiting. It's an open member of the LGBTQI plus community. For the sake of brevity, I'll just shorten it to their community. There has been one member of the community who came out as trans after their affiliation with the AFL had ended, in Danny Laidley. I'm not aware of any players coming out as queer or otherwise since ending their career. So no current players, or no players while they are playing, have ever come out. And I can think of one person who has come out after their affiliation to the league ended. If the AFL does not think that they have a problem with bigotry in this domain, they are kidding themselves. And if they think actions like this genuinely support any earnestly held desires to fix this problem, I don't think they've realised how undermining it is. If you think my breakdown could be useful for any of your friends, please share it. Not for my benefit. I am aware of people who feel very frustrated and a little bit lost for words as to why they're angry about this. It feels wrong. So if my breakdown can provide anyone with a little bit of clarity and a sounding board, that would be wonderful. If you like what I'm doing, generally speaking, please like and subscribe. If you have any recommendations, feel free to comment. And if it's something that I'm interested in and I think that it's something that I'm capable of doing some good work on, I would gladly make a video about it. This has been a change of pace. It's such an important issue as far as I'm concerned. I thought it deserved its own video. And I thank everyone who listened to the end. Now that Carlton's season is over, I plan on doing some content in the future. A couple of things that sort of leap to mind are maybe doing a top 5 list of things that I liked out of the year, potential areas for improvement, predictions for the off season. But I think those sorts of things, especially now that the season is over for us, can wait. I felt like this was a greater priority. As always, go Blues.